Sure. Obviously, there were elements of it that we didn't love, but the trade deals are now in place that cover, including the U.S., almost 60% of the global economy. Huge deal for America, like huge investments coming in, commitments to purchase everything from energy to defense products. The One Big Beautiful Bill is now law. It contains enormously powerful incentives for investing in America, for working in America, for locating in America, and these are both going to be massive tailwinds for the economy that are going to create an economic boom coming up. Neither of these were true in either of the months that experienced the downward revisions to the payroll data, but they are true now.
Has the U.S. reviewed the details of the deal that was agreed upon in Stockholm between China and the U.S.? And what does that deadline look like moving forward with the August 12th things hearing?
Yeah, so let me be clear. I'm not a trade negotiator. That's not my my responsibility, my area of work. But look, the deal was made in Geneva. The deal was made in London. Talks happened, and the United States is monitoring those talks and seeking continuation of the deal.
My last question for you is, do you think that the Fed will cut rates in September?
It's not for me to predict what the Fed is going to when the Fed is going to cut rates, but I will say, as I was just saying moments ago, that the president has a great track record on these issues, and he was right in 2018 when there was no inflation, and he thought interest rates didn't need to move higher. He was right in 2021 when he said that inflation was about to become a huge problem, and the Fed dismissed it as transitory, and eventually the Fed came around to his view again. And I think he's right now too, and I think it's actually going to end up being quite embarrassing for the Federal Reserve if they catch up to his view with too big a lag, as they did in 2022 to his view about inflation, and as they did in 2019 as well. So I think that we have to respect that the president has decades of experience as a successful businessman, and he's got a great sense for these things, and he has a great track record of doing this right.
Sorry, did you respond to the revisions in the job data?
To the revisions in the jobs data, yeah, I've been responding to that all morning.
Question of the day.
It is the question of the day. Look, the revisions were obviously they're not what we want to see, but I think that there's three things that I would say about them. One is about 60% of the overall revisions were due to quirks of the seasonal adjustment process, changes to seasonal adjustments. There's about 100,000 jobs in May, and I think about 40% in June. Teachers relating to the seasonal adjustment process. Second is our border policies, keeping American communities and American families safe, have led to a decline since the president took office of over 1 million foreign-born jobs, whereas American jobs have replaced those. That decline in foreign-born jobs, creating jobs for American workers, is ultimately going to show up in some sense in the economic data, and what we see is maybe that's happening now. And then finally, there's the fact that there was uncertainty around tariffs. That was critical to creating the leverage that the president used to accomplish some of the most impressive one-sided trade deals in history that are just so great for America. And there was uncertainty over the tax bill also, right? Are we going to see the biggest tax hike in history that pushes the economy into recession? Both of those those sources of uncertainty are resolved now. There's a spate of trade deals with some of our most important trading partners in place. That are going to be huge tailwinds to the economy. The One Big Beautiful Bill is law, contains massively powerful incentives for investing in America, for making America the best place on earth to do business. And I think that there probably were a lot of firms that, sort of sitting there in May and June, saying, hey, this tariff stuff's about to be resolved. This bill, hopefully becomes law within a month or two. Maybe I'm just going to hold off on this investment project. Maybe I'm just going to hold off until I know what the investment incentives are, because the bill is law. Maybe I'm just going to hold off on opening this new office until I know what the tariff situation looks like. That's totally reasonable and absolutely something that you would expect. However, that's done now. That uncertainty is resolved. People know what the lay of the land is now, both on the trade front and on the tax front. And so, we expect, we expect things to get materially stronger from here now that our policies are starting to sort into place.
But do you think the upshot of this is that maybe it creates more pressure on power to lower interest rates to try and stimulate that part of the economy?
Well, I think it's, I don't want to sort of tell the Fed what to do, but I think that, I do think that these data are evidence that the president not only has had a great track record in the past on making predictions about inflation, about the economy, but that he's probably right now too, and that will, and eventually folks will catch up to where he is.
But with the unemployment rate rising with the recent job numbers, how worried are you that maybe it's too late to reverse course, or is the administration confident that they can maybe get some of those jobs back? Or
I would describe the unemployment rate as stable, not as rising. I think that the month-to-month fluctuations we've seen in the unemployment rate are pretty much noise that you would expect, but we don't think at all there's any sense of it being too late. I mean, I just listed those extraordinarily powerful economic policies from the trade deals and the tax bill that are going to create an economic boom, and that's only part of it. We still are plowing ahead, full speed ahead on the deregulation. We're plowing full speed ahead on energy abundance. These are all tailwinds for the economy, and I think that there's probably often an excessive overemphasis on what the Fed is doing, when in fact what the rest of the administration is doing is just so profoundly powerful for generating economic growth and making America the best place on earth to do business, the best place on earth to hire.
if there's an overemphasis on what the Fed is doing, why do you think that this is the Fed has sort of become such a big, I would say, talking point for the president?
Well, I think policy is in exactly the right place on so many other policy domains. It's in the right place on tax, it's in the right place on trade, it's in the right place on regulation, it's in the right place on energy, right? Where is it not in the right place? And the president has been very clear about what he thinks about that, and he's absolutely entitled to his view, especially when he's got such a great track record of being right. But I've got to get to a meeting in a few minutes, so thank you guys.
I'm sorry for the audience. What's the explanation
sorry,
for
I've got it.
downward revisions